Star Wars 7x7 episode 2854. Today we're going to continue our series of deep dives into the hosting of Star Wars Celebration stages. This time we're going to be featuring a conversation with David W. Collins. Punch it! Hey Rebel Riser, I'm Alan Voivod and this is Star Wars 7x7, your daily dose of Star Wars joy. And thank you so much for joining me for it. So the conversation I had with David W. Collins took place in March of 2017 and Celebration Orlando happened in April of 2017. But at the time that we had the conversation, the panel schedule hadn't been announced, so there were some details that David couldn't quite talk about, but there was a lot that he could. And so I'm sharing the first half of my conversation with him about the hosting gig at Celebration Orlando today. So let's jump right into it. David Collins, thank you so much for joining me on Star Wars 7x7. How are you today?
Doing really well. Happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me on.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to talk with you again. We were just talking before the recording started. It's been 2 years just about since you and I last conversed at Celebration Anaheim.
That's right. Yeah, I remember it well. That was a crazy 4 days of awesome Star Wars stuff. It was so packed, and looking forward to this next one here in Orlando.
Yeah, and of course you were on stage at Celebration Europe last year, so things continue to get crazy for you. And now you're going to be back for Celebration Orlando, so congratulations about that.
Thank you. Yeah, it occurred to me, I think sometime in London, it occurred to me that if I sign on for Orlando, that it will be 10 years as a stage host.
Oh my gosh, really? So this is definitely not your first rodeo.
Right, yeah, this is my 10-year anniversary since the very first one that I hosted in 2007 back in Los Angeles. And what was really special about that one was that was the first time we ever saw a glimpse of the Clone Wars. And the first time anyone ever met Dave Filoni. And I was lucky enough to be the host on those panels and watched a Star Wars star get born, over the course of a weekend, because he just was so dynamic and so great with the audience and so approachable, but also because, they just delivered the goods in terms of what we were promised on the Clone Wars, which we, of course, got, 6 fantastic seasons of. So, yeah, that was great. Now this year, 10 years, I can't believe it. And I'm always feel lucky every time they call me to come back. I'm always just, hoping that I get to do it again, and sure enough, after London, I was asked again about Orlando, and I immediately said yes, and we're in full swing right now planning for it. Hopefully the panel schedules are going to be announced here imminently, although they're not as of this recording, but we're working really hard on that right now.
Excellent. So it was a very quick notification, like not long after London, that you found out that they were going to ask you for Orlando?
Generally, it's always been pretty fast. Yeah, I don't necessarily get the contract right away, but we Mary Franklin and I talk, and I think in the case of London and in the case of Anaheim in 2015, at closing ceremonies at both, I said, if you need me to do it again, she's like, oh, absolutely, we'll be talking about the next one. It's great. The only time that I didn't really know was when I did Celebration Europe 2, which was in Germany in the summer of 2013. They, for the longest time, were trying to get a German-speaking host.
Oh, okay.
It was something that they were in talks with the local promoters and the space, and that was something that they had done successfully when they did Celebration Japan in 2007. So they were trying to do the same thing, and they weren't finding the right combination of someone that had been involved in Star Wars, German and English, and knew the brand really well. And so they, Mary called me, I guess, I don't know, it must have just been a month or two before Celebration on that one, and said, can you do this? And I was hoping she was going to call, because I hadn't seen an announcement yet about who was hosting, and sure enough, she did. And other than that, it's always been pretty fast. So I've known about it, since London. That I was going to be, well, not quite. You don't ever officially know, because things can always change. Until you sign the contract, you don't officially know. But yeah, I was really holding out that I'd get to do it again.
And here you are. And we are right now recording this on March 21st, so we are a scant 3 weeks away, I think it is now.
Yeah, that's right. Ooh, it's coming up fast.
Now you're hosting the Galaxy stage at Orlando, and that was the same stage that you hosted in London. I don't think it was. I want to say you were on the digital stage in
Yeah,
Anaheim.
it's the same stage. They just changed the name basically. Uh,
So what does it mean? What does a Galaxy stage mean? Does it have a particular theme to it?
yeah, so the way that it used to be called all the way back in 2007. It was called the Celebration Theater, and the reason it was called that is because it had the digital projector and the 5.1 sound.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really kind of meant as a place to show content. So the idea was anytime there was content to show, they would show it. They would show it there. In Anaheim, I think that all changed, and because they had a really nice screen in the main theater, the arena, if you remember.
Yeah.
And, really great sound, and of course that's where they did the great Force Awakens panel, legendary Force Awakens panel.
Yes, yes.
And same in London for the Rogue One panel, and all the panels there. They had a great screen, great system. So calling it the digital, they were calling it the digital stage for a while, because of the digital projector. They called it the digital stage in Anaheim. And then I think after a while they just called it the Galaxy stage because it's just a name that's different than the main stage or the Celebration stage. So it really is just another really big space, kind of the second big space. But as far as I know, it's going to be bigger than ever this year. And it should be a really, really exciting space to be in. And for those that have been to the Orlando Convention Center, you kind of have an idea of what those spaces look like. I'm pretty sure it's going to be similar, maybe slightly modified. Still waiting on confirmation about that, but there should be plenty of seats for everybody.
I'm already hearing lots of chatter about sitting in the overnight lines and all of that fun stuff. So, yeah, it's people are really getting geared up and ready for it. And I've never been to Orlando for this. I mean, I've been with the family to go to, Disney and Universal and all that stuff, but never to the convention center there. So this is going to be a first for me.
Yeah, it's a massive convention center. It's really nice. And we're just in one part of the Orlando Convention Center. It's so big. I mean, there's a whole other convention center on the other side of the street, if I remember right.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. And even the one that we're in, that it's just ginormous to begin with.
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge. Yeah, it's very comfortable. It's nice and air conditioned. The last two that we did in Orlando, I think were in August.
Oh yeah. Oh.
Nice and cool on the inside, which was great. And the hotels are right there. Really, I love Celebration in Orlando. This will be my third one as host in Orlando. I just love it. It's a special place for me and my wife as well because we met at Celebration in Orlando in 2010.
Really? Oh, wonderful.
She used to work for Reed.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to work for Lucasfilm, and we were working on the show remotely. But when we met in person in Orlando, we just we've been inseparable ever since, basically.
Oh, that's terrific.
Years later, yeah.
Is she coming to Orlando with you this year?
The whole family's coming. We have a son who is 4 months old. He'll be 5 months old, by the time we're there.
Oh my gosh! Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, he's coming as well. So we're gonna go, and we'll do a little theme park action, and as well as do the convention. So we're very excited, and we have a lot of family coming into town as well. So yeah, the whole clan is coming to Orlando. So yeah, it's our big vacation and our baby's first time on an airplane. So
oh wow,
we're excited about it. Yeah,
that's going to be fun. And then first time the family's meeting the baby, or some of the family at least.
Some of the family. It's the first time he's going to meet some of his cousins.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Although he's met his grandparents, but yeah, it should be really fun. So that'll be an exciting time. Yeah, I mean it's such a family oriented city, and very family friendly. So that's one of the nice things about Orlando too is there's just so much to do and see, and huge Star Wars fan community there, obviously, and Disney fan community. So yeah, it should be a great time.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned one of your, highlights from being at Celebration was, seeing Dave Filoni's, star rising. What would you say are some of your other favorite moments, particularly from your stage last year or even, in previous years?
Let's see. I would have to say anytime I've done a Rebels or Clone Wars panel, those have always been enormous. And the one that I always tell, stop me if you've heard this before, by the way, but that I always talk about is when George Lucas crashed our panel for Clone Wars Season 5.
You may tell me that one all you want, and I'm sure there are some listeners here who haven't heard it either.
It was great. So he was just, this was, as it turns out, just on the eve of signing the deal with Bob Iger to sell the company to Disney. None of us knew that at the time.
Right.
But this was a celebration in Orlando in 2012, up in that third floor ballroom where the digital stage was at the time. And I think we're going to be in a similar space this time. But we were doing a Clone Wars panel, and at this point in my panel history with Dave Filoni and Joel Aaron, they wouldn't even show me the clips anymore ahead of time. They would just have me watch them in real time in the panel and just react to them and ask any questions that I wanted to. And I think part of that is just because they were so busy, and so Dave Filoni was very much like, it's okay, you just watch the clip and just ask whatever. Yeah. And I was like, okay. He's like, yeah, you're fine. You just do your thing, and the audience love it. So I did, and what was really stressful about that, though, is that I knew that there was a plan for George Lucas to crash the panel at the end. I was going to walk off stage, and he was basically just going to show up and surprise everybody.
Mm-hmm. Did the rest of the panel guests know it or no?
Yeah, because it was Dave Filoni and Joel Aaron, and they work with him every week, and everyone knew about it. PR was backstage. George was backstage basically the entire time, and that's what was making me nervous, because here's a show that he personally is working on with these guys, and I'm on stage, and I don't know what I'm going to ask them, know what's going to be in the clips, and so I'm just kind of going and making it up as I go. Which I took as a compliment, from Dave, that he trusted me to do that. That was great.
Yeah.
But George Lucas is backstage, and I don't want to fumble or anything like that. So anyway, they show a clip. I leave. George Lucas shows up, sits in my chair. I'm sitting out in the audience, just watching, just going, "Oh my God," And they have this great panel discussion. George puts on Dave Filoni's hat. Everyone laughs, that sort of thing. And backstage, and Lynn Hale was the head of PR for George for years, introduces me to him. George, David, you've met him before. It's David Collins, used to be LucasArts, but he was the host. And George looked at me and shook my hand, and he goes, "You sounded good up there. It sounded rehearsed." And I was like, "Well, thank you." And two thoughts I had about that. One was, George Lucas rarely compliments people, so I should really take that as a compliment. But thought number two was also, he saw right through me, because he knew that I didn't know what I was going to say next. So he could tell that it wasn't rehearsed and we were just winging it. And so that was a really fun moment. And then we all took a picture, and I still have that picture. Lucasfilm sent it to me. It's a picture of all of us together backstage after that panel, and I have it framed here in my office. That was really fun.
That's excellent.
Yeah, there's been so many panels through the years, to answer your question. The Smugglers radio drama series has always been a highlight for me, getting to play Han Solo. And the Battlefront panel in Anaheim was amazing. Man, it's I don't know if it's a sign of old age or just so much awesome Star Wars nowadays that I can't even remember some of the best stuff. People tell me about it, and I go, "Oh, that was incredible!" Yes. Because when you're doing it, you have to almost like, how on your computer you have to force quit applications every once in a while.
Yep.
Well, I have to force quit the last panel as fast as I can, as soon as I walk off stage, and hard boot the next panel as they come in, because oftentimes we have barely rehearsed, if at all, and I'm needing to say, okay, you're going to enter from here, grab your microphone, here's the stage manager, blah, blah, blah. Let's go through the rundown. I talked to your producer about it, but you and I didn't get to talk about it in person, so here's what we're going to do. And before you know it, ladies and gentlemen, David Collins. And I run back on stage, and I just go,
Mm-hmm.
And so by the end of the day, I have to stop and go, what happened today? What just happened, And then I have to look back at pictures and watch videos and stuff to kind of get my mindset back into what we even spoke about, It didn't always used to be this way, but since now we have all the movies and the TV shows, comic books, video games, so much content coming out, it's definitely been that way for the last two celebrations. I think this one won't won't be any different. It'll be so much great stuff to see.
Are you a consumer of all the? I mean, it's not the expanded universe anymore, but I think you would take my meaning with the books and the comics and the games. Do you also take in as much of that as you can?
Video games for sure. I mean, I've worked on so many of them.
Many of them, yes.
There are very few Star Wars video games since 2000 that I haven't worked on. Which is, I know it sounds crazy to say, but I really can only just think of a handful. Star Wars Kinect, I didn't work on. Jedi Outcast, I didn't really work on. But the rest of them, I kind of did. In some capacity, even Star Wars Battlefront. I voiced the Sullustans in Star Wars Battlefront and Nine Numb, and then got to voice direct for 6 weeks, and Star Wars Uprising and things like that. I still get called to work on some of these things. So I always keep up with those, and I always play them on release, and I even go back and play them. I started replaying The Force Unleashed the other day. And quick plug for Force Unleashed and Republic Commando fans, Sam Witwer, who is people know him as Darth Maul, but was also Starkiller in the Force Unleashed series. Yeah. He has a Twitch stream, and he plays video games on it all the time. Just search for Sam Witwer on Twitch. And we actually did a 3-part Force Unleashed stream, and we still have to finish it. And then we did a Republic Commando stream the other day, just talking about the game for hours. And that was really fun. But yeah, I love the games. I used to read all the books in college, and I think I made it all the way up to the New Jedi Order, and I got overwhelmed with career and started working at Lucas, and it was hard to keep up with the books. So I haven't really kept up with the books as much as I should. When Marvel started releasing the comic books in 2015, I was reading all of them. I read all of Darth Vader, all of Star Wars, all of Leia, Kanan, Shattered Empire. I read all of them. But I fell away once the movie came out, and then, got a chance to work on Force Awakens and Rogue One, and just started getting back into the fold. And somehow once that happens, a lot of the stuff that I used to keep up with, it becomes harder. But I try and hear about it, and I found Pablo Hidalgo's book on the expanded universe really, really helpful to jog my memory. It's like, oh yeah, I did read Crystal Stark by Vonda McIntyre. You forget some of that stuff because there's so much content. But do you keep up with all that stuff?
Like you, I got overwhelmed with the old expanded universe, now Legends, and fell off the wagon. But yeah, now with the rebooting of everything, I'm almost entirely current. There's some comic books that I am not totally up with, but I do a side podcast with a guy named Tim McMahon called the Expanded Comic Verse Podcast, and that's sort of my running excuse to be able to stay up to date on the comics as best I can.
Right. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that helps. I mean, look, podcasting definitely helps. I thought I knew a lot about John Williams' music before I started doing Star Wars Oxygen, and over the last 3 years, the amount of study that I've done has not only with John Williams' Star Wars scores, but all of John Williams. And then, it led me back to Beethoven and Tchaikovsky and Strauss and Stravinsky. And, it's just taken me back it's basically taken me back to college because I'm doing a podcast. And that's wonderful if you're a Star Wars fan. To have an excuse to just, I need to be on top of this because I'm going to get in front of a microphone and speak about it, is actually just a great way to express your fandom, and kind of keeps you on top of things.
And there you go. That's the first half of my conversation with David W. Collins about hosting at Celebration Orlando. And of course, we'll do this second half of that conversation on tomorrow's episode. But for now, it just remains for me to say thank you so much for joining me for this episode, as always, and may the Force be with you wherever in the world you may be.
7x7 is not endorsed or sponsored yet by Lucasfilm Limited, Disney, or 20th Century Fox, and is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Star Wars, the Star Wars logo, all names and pictures of Star Wars characters, vehicles, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Lucasfilm Limited, or their respective trademark and copyright holders. May the Force be with them. All original content is copyright 2021 by Star Wars 7x7. We hope you love it.